Hi everyone, welcome back to DGMC, Diwan-e-Ghalib Meri Zubani. To all our returning viewers, we are very happy you could join us again. And to the new viewers, we are delighted you discovered the podcast and decided to tune in for the first time. Now, if you were with me in the previous episode, you know that we started a new Ghazal last time. Ghazal 26 from Diwan-e-Ghalib, Gar Nigaah Andoh-e-Shab-e-Furqat, bayaan ho jaaega. We covered the first couplet, the matla of the ghazal last time. Today we are going to get into the second couplet. As always, I am going to read the couplet first and then we are going to get into the keywords, concepts and impressions. So this is how it goes. Zahra gar aisa hi, Shaam-e-Hijr mein hota hai aab. Zahra gar aisa hi, शाम-ए-हिज्र में होता है आब, परतव-ए-महताब साइल-ए-खानुmaan हो जाएगा. Let's do a quick approximate translation. First line, Zahra gar aisa hi शाम-ए-हिज्र में होता है आब. If during the evening of separation, this bile in my gallbladder turns into water, dilutes into water. Second line, Partav-e-Mahtaab Sail-e-Khaanumaan ho jaaega. Then rays of moonlight sure can also drown me and my home in its flood or in their flood. So that is the approximate translation. We are going to pick the keywords first as always and then we will get into the impression. So let's do the first line. Zahra gar aisa hi Shaam-e-Hijr mein hota hai aab. Zahra. Zahra translates to gallbladder containing bile, right? Or bile per se. I do think it has that connotation of zahar in it, but we'll leave that aside for now. Zahra technically translates to gallbladder containing bile. Zahra also at times is used to describe something very beautiful, something very radiant, something very illuminated. But that is not the meaning that plays in the couplet today. So we are going to keep that meaning aside. It's just for your reference. For today's couplet, Zahra is gallbladder containing bile. इस पर मिर्ज़ा गालिब का ही शेर. शब की बरके सोजे दिल से ज़हराए अब्र आप था. Shoala Jawala Haryak Halkae Girdab tha. We have covered this ghazal and of course we have created a whole impression around this couplet. But for today, here is the translation. Last night, due to the lightning created by the burning of my heart, the gall bladder and its bile of the clouds turned into water. And every single circle of the whirlpool that was created was like a burning flame, like a burning circle of flame. Very vivid, very descriptive, and of course the impression of it is detailed and complex, but that is the translation. Moving on to the second word complex of the first line, Shaam-e-Hijr, which translates to night of separation. Sham is night, Hijr is separation. इस पे एजी जोश का ये शेर. मुमकिन है शबे हिज्र दुआ का ना असर हो. मुमकिन है शबे हिज्र दुआ का ना असर हो. है रात वो क्या रात कि जिसकी ना सहर हो. So the approximate translation is it even possible that the prayers that are done during the night of separation are not fulfilled, are not heard, are not answered? Because is there ever a night that does not have a morning? सिमाब अकबर आबादी का ये शेर. उठाया मैंने शाम-ए-हिज्र लुत्फ़े गुफ्तगू क्या क्या. तसव्वुर ने तेरी तस्वीर के मुंह में ज़बां रख दी. Approximate translation is, in that night of separation, I have experienced such joys of conversation. because my imagination of you went ahead and almost put a voice, a tongue in your picture. And then we conversed all night through. कमर जलालवी का ये शेर. देखो चरागे कब्र उसे क्या जवाब दे. देखो चरागे कब्र उसे क्या जवाब दे. आएगी शाम-ए-हिज्र मुझे पूछती हुई. Beautiful couplet. So the approximate translation is, let's see what this lamp burning on my tombstone is going to answer when the night of separation comes searching for me. Because the lover and the night of separation, companions forever, right? And now that the lover is dead, the night will come looking for him. The night will come looking for him. सईद कैस का ये शेर. आस का बुझा तारा, शाम-ए-हिज्र का दरिया. Approximate translation is, the star of hope extinguished and the flood or the river of night of separation started flowing. And then last one from Ibn Insha. इनकी किस्मत में शबे माह को रोना कैसा. Beautiful couplet. इनकी किस्मत में शबे माह को रोना कैसा. इनके सीने में ना हसरत ना तमन्ना कोई. Beautiful couplet. The approximate translation is, these people do not have in their destiny to get the privilege of shedding tears on a full moon night, because these people in their hearts have no desire, have no wish. So a full moonlight does nothing for them, makes them feel nothing. For a lover, it's a different story, right? Okay, so that takes care of Shaam-e-Hijr. And then the last word of the first line, Aab. Aab is water. Sometimes it is also used to describe luster or shine to something. But talking about water, Bashir Badr का ये शेर. मुकद्दर मेरी चश्मे पुर आब का. मुकद्दर मेरी चश्मे पुर आब का, बरसती हुई रात बरसात की. So the approximate translation is, the destiny, the fate of my tear-soaked eyes is to be a night of continuous rainfall. मुनव्वर राना का ये शेर. यहाँ तो जो भी है आबे रवां का आशिक है. ब्यूटिफुल कपलेट. यहाँ तो जो भी है आबे रवां का आशिक है, किसी ने खुश्क नदी की तरफ नहीं देखा. द अप्रॉक्सिमेट ट्रांसलेशन इज, इन टुडेज टाइम्स everybody is a fan of a fully flowing river, a river full of water, gurgling in action, right? Nobody ever cares to think about the river that dried up. That too was at some time a nourishing, gurgling river, but now that it has spent all its water in nourishing everything around it, nobody bothers about it. Beautiful couplet. Okay, so that takes care of all the keywords in the first line. Moving on to the second line. Partav-e-Mahtaab Sail-e-Khaanumaan ho jaaega. Partav. So Partav is usually used to describe a ray. It can also be used to describe a beam of light, some kind of reflection. Sometimes it is used to describe splendor. So yeah, that is Partav. इस पे बेदम शाह वारसी का शेर. परतव-ए-महर से मामूर है जर्रा जर्रा. परतव-ए-महर से मामूर है जर्रा जर्रा, लहरें लेता है हर एक कतरा में, लहरें लेता है हर एक कतरे में, दरिया देखो. So the approximate translation is that from the reflection, from the beams from the rays of the sun, every particle is fully drenched, fully covered, right? Fully encompassed. Look how every particle has waves of an entire ocean rippling in it. Such is the shine of the sun on every particle that you can see in every single particle the waves of an entire ocean rippling. As you know, sunlight has that effect, right, when it hits objects. Beautiful couplet, very visual. Moving on to the next word, Mehtaab. Partav-e-Mahtaab. So Mehtaab translates to the moon. One second. Mehtaab translates to the moon, also translates to an arch, but for today's couplet, the moon. इस पे हबीब जलीब का ये शेर, आज सोए हैं तहे खाक न जाने यहाँ कितने, कोई शोला, कोई शबनम, कोई महताब जबी था. Beautiful couplet. So the approximate translation is, today they lie sleeping in the dust, many of them, some who had the face like a flame, some who had the face like a dewdrop, some who had a face like the moon. Such exquisite creatures today lie sleeping in dust. मिर्ज़ा गालिब का ये शेर, गालिब छुटी शराब पर अब भी कभी कभी, पीता हूँ रोज़े अब्र और शबे महताब में. So the approximate translation is that Ghalib, and the poet is referring to himself, I have left drinking. I have left drinking, I have given up drinking, but even today, every now and then, I will take a drink if either it is raining, Roze Abr, day of water, translates to day of rain, or Shab-e-Mahtaab, a full moon night. These are two scenarios in which it is difficult to abstain. So these are some exceptions where I still, even today, indulge in a drink or two. जलील मनिकपुरी का ये शेर, वो चांदनी में फिरते हैं घर घर ये शोर है, वो चांदनी में फिरते हैं घर घर ये शोर है, निकला है आफताब शबे महताब में. So the approximate translation is that the rumor is, every house, in every house, the rumor is that she walks in moonlight itself. वो poetry याद आ रही है, she walks in beauty like the night, right, of cloudless climes and starry skies. So the rumor is in every house that she walks in moonlight on a full moonlight, on a full moon night. When she steps out, it's almost as if the sun itself has stepped out in a full moon night. Just look at the visual extravaganza, right? It's a full moon night, and when the beloved steps out in the full moon night, it almost seems as if the sun has stepped out in the full moon night. Beautiful. Moving on to the next word, Sail. Sail is a flow of water, flood, a current, something with fluidity to it, right? इस पे शहजाद अहमद का ये शेर, a beautiful couplet. तिनका हूँ मगर साइल के रास्ते में खड़ा हूँ, तिनका हूँ मगर साइल के रास्ते में खड़ा हूँ, ए भागने वालों मेरी हिम्मत नहीं देखी. The approximate translation is, I am but a straw, but a single straw, and I'm standing against a flood. I am but a single straw standing against the flood, standing amidst a flood. O you people who are running away, has anyone noticed the courage I am showing, despite being a single straw, right? Standing amidst a flood. अहमद फराज का ये शेर, इश्क नशा है न जादू जो उतर भी जाए, ये तो एक साइले बला है सो गुजर भी जाए. So the approximate translation is, neither is love an intoxication, neither is love some kind of magic. And hence, unlike intoxication and magic, love never fades, never comes down in its intensity, right? Love is a flood of calamity. Love is a flood of calamity which will run its course and pass you by. Right? It is not something which will spike and then come down like magic or like intoxication. It is a flood of calamity that will, per its course, pass you by, and you can do nothing about it. Okay, so that takes care of Sail. Moving on to Khaanumaan, which is home, dwelling, place. इस पे दाग दहलवी का शेर, हैं तेरे दिल में सबके ठिकाने बुरे भले, मैं खानुमा खराब ही बर्बाद रह गया. So the approximate translation is, in your heart there is place, there is home for both good and bad people. It is just me, the wretched, broken-hearted, Khanuma Kharab, right? Who could never find a place in your heart, right? फिराक गोरखपुरी का ये शेर, पनाह मांग रही है हरी भरी दुनिया, ना पूछ आह दिले खानुमा खराब की आँच. So the approximate translation is, the world itself is begging for respite, is begging to be spared. Do not even ask me the type of heat, the type of fire this broken heart of mine is emitting right now. That the world itself is asking me to do something. Stop this fire, stop this heat. It will destroy the world. And last one, Mir Taqi Mir ka शेर, इश्क का घर है मीर से आबाद, ऐसे फिर खानुमा खराब कहाँ. Beautiful couplet. Approximate translation is, the house of love is flourishing because of Mir, and the poet is referring to himself. Because after all, when has someone this broken-hearted ever again come into existence like Mir, right? So when has ever a broken-hearted lover like him ever come again into existence after him? So the house of love is flourishing and famous because of Mir, the broken-hearted lover. So that takes care of all the keywords of the second line. Okay, moving on to the impression. First line, Zahra gar aisa hi Shaam-e-Hijr mein hota hai aab. If during evening of separation, this is how bile of gallbladder turns to water. Now, in the second couplet, just like the first couplet, the matla, which we covered in the last episode, there is a if and then logic. The first couplet also has it. This one also has it. It's a favorite style that Ghalib adopts. The first line focuses on the watering down of bile. This is, like I said in the keywords also, this is not the first time we see Ghalib use this metaphor or this concept. We have already covered it in another ghazal, Shab ki bar ke soze dil se, Zahra-e abro aab tha, Shola jawala har yak, halka-e girdab tha. Okay, moving on to the impression. First line, Zahra gar aisa hi शाम-e-Hijr में होता है आप. Like we said, the approximate translation is, if during evening of separation, this is how bile of gallbladder turns to water. Now, just like the first couplet, the matla, which we covered in the last episode, this second couplet also follows the if and then logic. The first line focuses on the watering down of bile. And like we said in the keywords, this is not the first time we see Ghalib use this metaphor or concept. We have already covered another ghazal where he uses this, and this is the couplet from that ghazal. Shab ki bar ke soze dil se Zahra abru aap tha, Shola jawala har yak halka girdab tha. The fact that it is not a one-time usage of a metaphor or concept made us at DGMZ decide we should try to dig into the background of this concept and research it a bit. Why is this metaphor of watered down bile so popular with Ghalib that he uses it multiple times? We traced the concept as back as we could, and yes, we indeed got a good grasp of it. So, we will read to you the gist we prepared, which will hopefully familiarize you with this concept much better than just the mere translation that says watering down of the bile. The ancient medical hypothesis of four humors was based in the idea that there were four liquid substances in the human body, called humors. Disease and disorders were tied either to the excess or lack of one or more of these four fluids. The four humors, as described by Greek physician Hippocrates as part of Hippocratic medicine, are black bile, yellow bile, phlegm, and blood. Based on Hippocratic medicine, it was believed that for a body to be healthy, the four humors should be balanced in amount and strength. There were thought to be two kinds of bile among the humors, black and yellow. Black bile was associated with depression and yellow with aggression. So, a bilious fellow was a way of referring to someone with anger issues. References to black bile usually use the word melancholia, signifying sadness or depression. The proper blending and balance of the four humors was known as eucrasia. Each humor corresponds to one of the traditional four temperaments. The four temperament theory is a proto-psychological theory which suggests that there are four fundamental personality types: sanguine, choleric, melancholic, and phlegmatic. Hippocrates described the four temperaments as part of the ancient medical concept of humorism, that four bodily fluids affect human personality traits and behaviors. The humoralist system of medicine was highly individualistic, for all patients were said to have their own unique humoral composition. From Hippocrates onward, the humoral theory was adopted by Greek, Roman, and Islamic physicians and dominated the view of the human body among European physicians until at least 1543. Modern medical science, however, does not define a fixed relationship between internal secretions and personality, although some psychological personality type systems use categories similar to the Greek temperaments. The four temperament theory was abandoned after the 1850s. So, that background, that historical background, gave us great insight into why was gallbladder and bile connected, or how was gallbladder and bile connected to connected to courage and strength and things like that, right? And when we went into this background, we realized that for a long time, medical and scientific interpretations were taking four primary body fluids into account for everything. Forget about just diseases and disorders. These four fluids were put in a formula to figure out personalities, traits, temperaments, strengths, qualities of people. Right? So it is very interesting how Ghalib says that if your bile turns to water, then your trait of strength and perseverance and your resilience also get watered down. The dilution of bile has an impact on your personality traits. So clearly, there was a strong ancient medical and scientific association of these four bodily fluids with personality traits. Coming back to today's couplet, right? Zahra, which literally translates to gallbladder bile, but metaphorically, it translates to boldness, strength, courage, strong spirit, resilience, right? And there are phrases like Zahra aab hona, which is pretty much covered in our couplet today, which translates to gallbladder or bile turning to water. Literally, but metaphorically, it translates to being distressed, being terrified, being panic stricken, being afraid, being very, what is that word I'm looking for? Very helpless, dominated by negative emotions, by insecurity, by fear, by loneliness. And then there's another phrase, Zahra fatna, right, which is literally translated to the gallbladder bursting. But metaphorically, it translates to extreme amounts of envy towards someone. So it is very important to understand, because in today's time, if you read this, it looks a little strange, right? That my gallbladder turned to water. It really does not make much sense. But if you keep the four humor theory in mind, you keep the personalities in mind, the four temperament theory in mind, you can start getting the drift of what Ghalib is saying. Now, it's not only about the gallbladder, right? So as we all know, anatomically, gallbladder is almost inseparably attached to the liver, one of the major organs of human body. And this close association of the gallbladder with liver also cannot be ignored. We have covered in multiple ghazals in the past that in Urdu poetry, heart is the seat of passion and love. Liver, on the other hand, is the seat of courage, valor, resilience, perseverance, strength. So that close association of gallbladder with the liver also needs to be taken into account when we are talking about dilution of bile. So basically, again, by association, the liver and its ability, metaphorical ability of courage and strength, gets diluted, gets compromised. Such is the grief, such is the whatever duress there is on that liver or on that person, such is the duress that it dilutes the bile and the liver's potential. अमीर मिनाई का ये शेर, तीर खाने की हवस है तो जिगर पैदा कर, तीर खाने की हवस है तो जिगर पैदा कर, सरफरोशी की तमन्ना है तो सर पैदा कर. Right? So the approximate translation is, if you want to receive arrows from the enemy, if you want to be able to handle arrows struck by the enemy at you, then you have to develop a strong liver. You have to develop a liver for that. by extension courage for that, bravery for that, right? And if you want to be associated with giving up your life, sacrificing your life for your nation, then develop a head which is ready to be cut, right? Which will not bow down, but will be ready to be cut off, chopped off, right? Sacrificed. And then Mirza Ghalib का ये शेर, of course we have covered this ghazal. कोई मेरे दिल से पूछे तेरे तीरेनी में कश को, ये खलिश कहाँ से होती जो जिगर के पार होता. Approximate translation is, somebody should ask this heart of mine, right? Whether this arrow struck by you, beloved, would hurt so much, would fester so much, had my heart allowed it to cross through and through. The fact that my heart stopped it in itself, caught it, aborted it in itself, right, has given this arrow the ability to produce so much pain and grief and festering. If the heart had allowed it to pass it through, it would not hurt me so much. So that takes care of the association of the gallbladder, the bile, and the liver, and associated courage, perseverance along with it. Usually, the lover is seen bearing and surviving the worst of the worst, thanks to the grit, the gall of his liver, right? Or his gallbladder. The gall and grit is a matter of pride for him. In today's couplet, Ghalib paints a vivid scenario, seemingly a hypothetical scenario, because he has cleverly included gar. Gar translates to if. Now, sometimes if is used as a matter of fact statement, sometimes it is used to actually create a hypothetical scenario. I will leave it up to you how it comes across to you, but it is definitely there in the couplet. So there is room for both. This is a Ghalib couplet. Now, let's say Ghalib is painting a hypothetical scenario. Gar actually literally translates to if. So Ghalib is saying in the first line that if this night of separation tests the grit and gall of the lover in such a way that it turns his bile to water. So if this happens, then we will come to the second line. When we come to it, we will know what else will happen. But for now, let's focus on the if. Now, the second concept, which is very pivotal, which is very critical to the first line, is the night of separation. This couplet is very similar to the first one. First one we did Shab-e-Furqat, which is also night of separation, and in the second one we are doing Shaam-e-Hijr, which is also night of separation. Night of separation, we have covered it in the first couplet, but for today's episode, night of separation comes with a very notorious reputation. The lover shivers in his boots. This is one thing that is his undoing, right? That is his undoing. And it is because these nights of separation, and like I said in the previous episode, it doesn't matter whether it is one night or it is night after night. The quantity doesn't matter, it is the quality, right? So these nights of separation are the darkest, the coldest, the longest, the loneliest, and the most painful nights the lover has to go through. He's lucky if they end, but if they don't end, then that grit, that determination to go through them night after night is not an easy thing. And for a lover who is at the receiving end of unrequited love, it is pretty much full and final that these nights are not going to change till the day he dies. मुझे क्या बुरा था मरना अगर एक बार होता, right? सो इस पे इमाम बख्श नासिक का ये शेर, सिया बख्ती में कब कोई किसी का साथ देता है, कि तारीकी में साया भी जुदा रहता है इंसान से. सो द अप्रॉक्सीमेट ट्रांसलेशन इज, इन द टाइम्स ऑफ बैड लक, in the times of misfortune, whoever comes to give you company. These are times of darkness when your own shadow also deserts you. Such is the darkness. That one thing you can depend on, right? मेरा साया मेरा कभी साथ नहीं छोड़ेगा. My shadow will never desert me. But such is the darkness of these nights of separation that your shadow also deserts you. ज़हरा निगाह का ये शेर, जबरे दिले बेमहर का चर्चा नहीं होता, तारीकी ये शब में कोई चेहरा नहीं होता. So the approximate translation is that the tyranny, the cruelty of a loveless heart is never discussed, is never talked about, is never rumored about. And it is so true. The rumors are always about the heart that loves. the cruelty of the hearts that don't love somehow is always behind curtains. Never talked about. They never come in the open. It requires courage, right? सो जबरे दिले बेमहर का चर्चा नहीं होता, तारीकी शब में कोई चेहरा नहीं होता. सो इन द डार्कनेस ऑफ दीज नाइट्स देर आर नो फेसेस, देर आर नो फेसेस. सच इज द डार्कनेस. चकबस्त ब्रज नारायण का ये शेर, नहीं घटती मेरी आंखों में तारीकी शबे गम की, ये तारे रोशनी अपनी अबस बर्बाद करते हैं. Beautiful couplet. Approximate translation is, it never decreases this darkness of nights of separation that has settled in my eyes. These stars up in the sky are wasting their light, sending it down, because it is not taking away, it is not decreasing the darkness of the night of separation that has settled in my eyes. अर्पित शर्मा अर्पित का ये शेर, उफ ये सन्नाटा, ये तारीकी, ये तन्हाई का खौफ, तेरे बिन जीते ही जी है मर चुका कमरे में वो. मतलब gist of the whole thing. Beautiful couplet to capture the gist of the night of separation. So the approximate translation is, oh my God, this silence, oh my God, this darkness, oh my God, this loneliness and the fear of these things. Silence, darkness, loneliness, and the fear of all these three things. Living without you has made that person already give up his life or give up the hope for life in that room he is in. And of course, that room is dark, lonely, silent, right? So, beautiful, beautiful couplet by Arpit Sharma. Staying on the Shab-e-Furqat, because after all, this is the trigger which is doing everything else, right? So, we should spend some time with it. पीरज़ादा कासिम का ये शेर, पीरज़ादा कासिम का ये शेर, दिल बुझे तो तारीकी दूर फिर नहीं होती, लाख सर पे आ पहुंचे आफताब दुनिया के. Again a lovely couplet. Approximate translation is, if the flame in your heart extinguishes, then your darkness will never ever end. No matter how many thousands and thousands of suns might shine on your head, the darkness will not leave you. The darkness will not end if the light in your heart extinguishes. अमीर शौकी का ये शेर, साया भी मेरा खो गया तारीकी शब में, जुल्मत का असर ऐसा रहा सुबह से पहले. Same vibe which we had in the other couplet. The approximate translation is, even my own shadow got lost in the deep darkness of this night of separation. This was the level of torture I bore throughout that night before the morning arrived. भरत भूषण पंत का ये शेर, सब अंधेरों से जुदा दिल का अंधेरा जिस तरह, सब अंधेरों से जुदा दिल का अंधेरा जिस तरह, हर उजाले से है घर की रोशनी बिल्कुल अलग. A beautiful couplet, right? So the approximate translation is, from all the darknesses available, possible, the darkness of the heart is in a league of its own. Just like of all the illumination and lights available to us, the light of home, the light inside your home is in a class of its own. शाह अकबर दानापुरी का ये शेर, खूब देखी है अंधेरी शबे गम की अकबर, हम नहीं तीरगिए कब्र से डरने वाले. Approximate translation is, Akbar, and the poet is referring to himself, I have seen many a nights, many a dark nights of separation. Therefore, I am not someone who is going to, even for a moment, hesitate or get anxious about the darkness of my tomb, of being there all by myself in dark forever, because I come with a lot of experience, right? I am the lover who night after night after night has spent these darkest, deepest, loneliest nights of separation. So, learnt on job. Very good at it. And then John Elia का ये शेर, सारी तारीफें उन अंधेरों की जिनमें परतव ना कोई परछाई. Approximate translation is, all praises to those darknesses, if there is such a word, all praises to those darknesses where there is no ray of light, where there is no shadow. That is the level of pitch darkness. So, after, and I think this is the first time we have given so many couplets to a concept. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? All these couplets to capture the essence. It's not just about the night. It's not just about being away from the beloved. It is not about separation. There is just this quality to the night, which is very ominous, right? The night of separation, unlike other nights, the darkness, the loneliness, the silence is so much that even your own shadow deserts you. Because you remember in the last episode we were saying, so what keeps company, right? What are the things that keep lover company during these nights of separation? And I had mentioned that couplet, his shadow. मेरा साया दीवार पे जाके जम गया होगा वाला जो शेर था, so वो भी नहीं होता. वो भी नहीं होता. Your own shadow also deserts you. Such is the darkness. Now a few minutes on how Ghalib himself describes the darkness, hopelessness and isolation of the night of separation. क्या कहूँ तारीकी जिंदाए गम अंधेर है, पुम्बा नूरे सुबह से कम जिसके रोज़ा में नहीं. So the approximate translation is, what can I say, what can I tell you about the darkness of the cell, the prison cell of grief. Even in the crevice of this cell, that crevice design on the wall, right? Even in the crevices, if you were to put cotton, that also would shine up like an orb of light. Such is the darkness. That cotton would seem like a source of light, just because of the sheer fact that it is white in color. अब वही बात है ना, बाकी सब लोग अंधेरा बयान कर रहे, अब गालिब अंधेरा बयान कर रहे हैं. Totally different league. Totally different. You have to throw open the doors of imagination, visualization, and ऐसा नहीं कि कोई fancy चीज, cotton. Everybody will relate to it. And now you're suddenly imagining, oh, so a dark room and the cotton is shining in it. Wow, क्या बात है. मतलब बात करने का तरीका. गालिब का ही दूसरा शेर, बयां किससे हो जुल्मत गुस्तारी मेरे शबिस्तां की, शबे मैं हो जो रख तू पुनबा दीवारों के रोजा में. सेम थिंग. How would I express the darkness of my bedroom, right? My bedroom. Because it would be a moonlit night if I was to put pieces of cotton in the crevice work of my windows or walls. कमरा इतना dark है, the room is so dark that even though it is a dark night outside, there is enough light outside to make the cotton shine. Such is, the room is darker than the night outside. And this is where, again, like I said, Ghalib in a class of his own. The way he will quantify things, the way he will qualify things is totally different. So everybody is going to talk about darkness and then Ghalib will talk about darkness. And those two couplets, though very similar because he's using cotton, they are just a great example of his off the charts thinking. Okay. In this first line, so let's wind up the first line. In this first line, Ghalib states that if this night of separation somehow finally succeeds in overpowering the grit and gall of the lover, it will convert his bile to water. By extension, it will make his bile ineffective, diluted, powerless. Metaphorically, make the lover ineffective, powerless, weak, lacking strength and courage, lacking perseverance and resilience. Okay, moving on to the second line and its impression. Partav-e-Mahtaab Sail-e-Khaanumaan ho jaaega. Like we said in the approximate translation, then the ray of moonlight too will turn to water and flood my household. Ghalib continues with the if and then logic and gives us the then in the second line. If the impossible of the first line ever happens, then the impossible of the second line will happen too. Now, we know that moon is all about light, not just any light, light for the darkest of the dark, the night itself, right? Moon is not just any source of light. It is a source of light for one of the most darkest things we have known, the night. With this second line, we see Ghalib doing a few things. Number one, in his unsaid way, Ghalib compares the grit and gall of the lover to the light and illumination of the moon. Number two, Ghalib describes the impact of this night of separation by saying that if this night can turn a lover's gall and grit to water, then it sure can turn the moonlight itself to water and make that water flood the lover's house and destroy it. And thirdly, in true Ghalib style, he captures how the elements themselves move, respond, transform under the pressure of the lover's suffering and pain. In this case, suffering and pain caused by the night of separation. So in this second line, he brings home these three messages. And these are very typical Ghalib messages, right? That number one, the grit and strength of the lover is at par with the biggest elemental structures up there. The sun, the moon, the clouds, the universe, Anka. I mean, Ghalib would always compare the lover to the biggest and the grandest of all in the cosmos. Number two, the pain and the suffering that the lover endures is such that it will not only impact the lover, but the intensity is such that it will impact the elements around the lover. The lover is not bearing any regular run-of-the-mill grief and pain. The type of grief and pain the lover bears is enough to move nature, elements, cosmos, universe itself. And lastly, yes, again, the same thing, that what will transform the lover is something that has the ability to transform the elements also. So those three very typical Ghalib messages. Now we know that usually the light of moon, even the light of sun, are supposed to be light-giving, life-giving, nourishing, a source of strength, joy, peace, calmness, right? मिर्ज़ा गालिब का ही ये शेर है, कायनात को हरकत तेरे ज़ौक़ से, परतव से आफ़ताब के ज़र्रे में जा है. So the approximate translation is that the movement, the motion in the creation is because it has a taste for you, just like the life in every grain of sand is because of the sun that is shining down on it. So that nourishing role of sun and moon. मिर्ज़ा गालिब का ही एक और शेर on this concept. ए परतवे खुर्शीद जहाँ ताब इधर भी, ए परतवे खुर्शीद जहाँ ताब इधर भी, साए की तरह हम पे अजब वक्त पड़ा है. Approximate translation is, O you ray of the sun that warms the entire world, look at me, look in my direction also, because like a shadow, a strange, distressful time has fallen upon me. So, shine your benevolent light on me. Look towards me. Look in my direction also. But in this couplet, that is not the aspect of sun and moon that Ghalib has captured, the aspect which is nourishing and life-giving and light-giving. In today's couplet, Ghalib has captured the unnatural, destructive aspect of the moon, which is triggered by the grief and pain of the ominous night of separation. So these light and life-giving structures can many a times be cause of destruction also. Ghalib का ही शेर, परतवे खुर से है शबनम को फना की तालीम, मैं भी हूँ एक इनायत की नज़र होते तक. The approximate translation is that the burning intensity of the sun shining down is the reason for the destruction of a dewdrop. A beautiful, delicate dewdrop that survived all night, survived the early morning hours, will get destroyed as soon as the first ray of sun hits it. So, sun is nourishing everything, but Ghalib finds this one artifact which will get destroyed because of the sun. That morning dewdrop. And in the second line he says that I too am waiting for that one favorable glance, of course from the beloved, and after that the joy will be such that probably in sheer joy I too will get self-destroyed, because I would have accomplished my ultimate goal, to get a favorable glance from her. So Ghalib establishes the fact that the courage and strength of the lover is unmatched. But in the event this courage and grit, this gall, was to turn to water, this would be no ordinary event, right? This would be an intense, calamitous event, and be sure that if this event can turn the grit and gall of the lover to water, it can also transform the forces of nature and element through. It can, it will, right? It can, it will. And in this couplet, it would be the moon. In this night of separation, the moon will liquefy to water. The moonlight will flow down to earth in this destructive flood which is going to drown the entire house where the lover resides. That will be the impact. The moon that usually brings respite and light and calmness to the dark night is portrayed by Ghalib in this couplet as being transformed into a destructive force which goes against the lover. Just the way his gall and bile have turned to water and are now not working in his favor, the moonlight will also not work in his favor. It will not work in his favor. Simply put, never will it happen that the lover will lose his courage and perseverance to bear the grief of the nights of separation. But if that ever happens, then you can be rest assured it will be an event that will make the moon itself turn to water and moonlight flow down in a flood which will fill up and drown the lover's house. So if that is possible, then this is also possible. If that will happen, then this will also happen. Aisa nahi hoga. It is not going to be that the lover himself, all by himself, will have his bile turn to water and will lose his courage and will get defeated by the night of separation. It's not going to be that simple, because the lover is not going to let that happen. And if that happens, it means there was calamitous proportions of pain and grief and darkness, and such were the proportions that they also made the moon melt and flow down and cause a flood on earth. Ghalib style, right? So that takes care of Zahra gar aisa hi Shaam-e-Hijr mein hota hai aab, Partav-e-Mahtaab Sail-e-Khaanumaan ho jaaega. Now I will leave you with a beautiful ghazal from Jigar Muradabadi, which has a few couplets that speak very well to the couplet from today. So this is how it goes. The ghazal is titled Dil mein kisi ke raah kiye ja raha hoon main. दिल में किसी के राह किए जा रहा हूँ मैं, कितना हंसी गुनाह किए जा रहा हूँ मैं, दुनियाए दिल तबाह किए जा रहा हूँ मैं, सर्फ-ए-निगाह किए जा रहा हूँ मैं, फ़र्द अमल सियाह किए जा रहा हूँ मैं, रहमत को बेपनाह किए जा रहा हूँ मैं, ऐसी भी एक निगाह किए जा रहा हूँ मैं, ज़र्रों को महरो-माह किए जा रहा हूँ मैं, मुझसे लगे हैं इश्क की अज़मत को चार चांद, खुद हुस्न को गवाह किए जा रहा हूँ मैं। दफ्तर है एक मानिए बेलफ्ज़ो सौत का, सादा सी जो निगाह किए जा रहा हूँ मैं, आगे कदम बांधें जिन्हें सूझता नहीं, रोशन चरागे राह किए जा रहा हूँ मैं, मौसमी जमाल को भी जिन पे रश्क है, ऐसे भी कुछ गुनाह किए जा रहा हूँ मैं, तनकीदे हुस्न मसलहते खासे इश्क है, ये जुर्म गाह गाह किए जा रहा हूँ मैं, उठी नहीं है आँख मगर उसके रूबरू, ना दीदा एक निगाह किए जा रहा हूँ मैं, गुलशन परस्त हूँ मुझे गुल ही नहीं अजीज, कांटों से भी निबाह किए जा रहा हूँ मैं, यूं जिंदगी गुजार रहा हूँ तेरे बगैर, जैसे कोई गुनाह किए जा रहा हूँ मैं, मुझसे अदा हुआ है जिगर जुस्तजू का हक, हर जर्रे को गवाह किए जा रहा हूँ मैं, दिल में किसी के राह किए जा रहा हूँ मैं, कितना हंसी गुनाह किए जा रहा हूँ मैं. All right, so that brings us to the end of today's impression. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, we'll be very keen to hear feedback from you, comments, thoughts. Now, for the new viewers, as always, a strong recommendation to go through the episode titled Introduction to DGMZ, because it will give you a good insight into the motivation and inspiration behind this podcast. The homepage of the channel has multiple playlists. Please surf through them and pick episodes that interest you. Gentle reminder, we have launched TGMC Bites. You can find those bites under the Shorts tab. This is the first time we are posting short videos, so probably you are not checking them or have never checked them before, but please do, because that's where you will find the bites. There is a dedicated playlist for the bites also, right there on the homepage of the channel. So if you just want to access, we have posted 2 of them now, so if you want to access them, that would be a good place to do that. Let me end this episode by sending a lot of love and light to all you dear viewers, and thanks for watching.